And we are now the only cotton spinner in the UK. We are the only cotton mill, and there's still well in excess of 3,000 cotton mills in the northwest of the UK. We're the only cotton mill that actually spins. So yes, the industry declined from the 1960s all the way through, and in 1980 was the last time cotton was commercially spun until we started again in 2016.
So spinning's the key component then?
That's what we do, is we take the raw materials from either California or directly from Queensland, and we take the raw material here, we clean it and we spin it into yarn. Then we commission fabrics solely in the UK, so whether that's a knitted fabric for a t-shirt or a woven fabric for trench coats or shirting, we make from end to end in the UK within inside 50 miles of this facility.
So you know the provenance of the cotton that you're getting. Is that quite rare to be able to specify the farms that it comes from?
It's very important to us, and in actual fact it's vital to our history and what message that we're giving to our consumer. But is it rare? Yes, because really the cotton industry hasn't changed in nearly 300 years. It's still dominated by traders that walk into different growing territories and buy the whole of the crop for a year, or the whole of the crop, and then try and sell that. That's not a route that we wanted, because we needed to know that the cotton, its source, we needed to know it was grown correctly. We needed to be able to go to the field and go to the paddock and talk to the people that actually grow the cotton to see what they're doing with water, what they're doing with chemicals, and how they're treating their employees, and how they're cultivating the land for the future.
So there's quite a lack of trust generally within the industry, is there? Like a lot of judgment. Is there reason for that?
Yeah, there's a very good friend of mine once said that it's the most corrupt industry on earth. And the reason for that is because there's no money ultimately in growing cotton. There's no money in spinning cotton. There's no money in making garments anymore, because there's no value that's placed on the actual garment and the product itself. So when people are pushing to reduce price and reduce price and reduce price, ultimately the lowest common denominator is for people to cheat. And over the years, what spinners have been doing throughout the world is that they've been taking a piece of cotton from one area, blending it with another piece of cotton that's a bit cheaper from another area, and getting away with that price and really downgrading the quality. And all of a sudden then you don't know where your cotton has come from, you don't know where the garment has come from, you don't know whether it's actually been grown in a responsible, sustainable way, or whether it's actually involved with some type of modern day slavery or unethical practices and growing practices, or really in an environmental way that isn't sustainable. So the whole of cotton has got a bad reputation of being a non-sustainable material, or really endemic with inside the problem and poverty and corruption. We decided to buck that trend and say, no, cotton itself is a very, very sustainable product if it's grown correctly, if it's treated correctly. It's a fantastic natural material. But to do that, we need to know exactly which farm, which paddock, and which people are actually growing that. And hence the reason why we go directly to the farm, and the relationship directly with ourselves and the farms are very, very important to us.
So what about the labelling systems that do exist better, the BCI initiative and got other labelling?
So it starts with a group of people that have got the right meaning of its intent. But most of the situations is that it's run by people that don't know and don't understand the dynamic of actually agriculture, or dynamic of the actual supply chain. So BCI, GOTS, in terms of cotton, isn't worth the paper it's written on. It's either corrupt, or the benchmark or the standard itself is actually can't be transferred globally. In certain circumstances, you can buy a certificate that isn't directly linked to the lint itself. In some way, we feel that is hoodwinking the consumer. When it has a label attached to it, the consumer should be 100% sure that the lint and the cotton that's used with inside that garment is actually the lint and the cotton that you've got that certificate from. How can it be otherwise? But that's not the situation. So hence the reason why, whilst we understand the certification processes, and whilst we applaud them for their meaning and intent, we go a step further than that. We go directly to the farm. So we can bring directly from paddock to the product, but directly to the consumer. And we can give you a complete lineage of your t-shirt, your hoodie, your sweater, your shirt, your trench coat, and we can trace every single garment back to the field in which it's grown.
Cotton does come under a lot of criticism as not, particularly on farm, high water consumption and that sort of thing. What's your perspective on that?
The challenge with that is that cotton isn't sustainable if it's not grown ethically and it's not grown sustainably. So some of that is about control. Some of that is about governance, husbandry. Some of that is about honesty and transparency. So would I say that cotton is absolutely sustainable? No, not if it's not grown responsibly, not if it's actually managed correctly. So that's another reason why we went directly to the farm. We only choose a farm in California and we choose a farm in Queensland that are looking after their land, that are looking after their value, looking after their future. Some of these farms are 7 or 8 generations, and they're massive farms, 200,000 acres in this specific case, that are monitoring how much water per square metre, how much chemical per square metre, and are justifying exactly what chemicals are needed and what levels of nutrients are within inside the soil at times. That's the sustainable approach that we're looking for. So we know that farm's going to be there for generations to come. We know that it's positive impact on the land itself. That's what's important, and having that fed through to the client so the client can be sure that when they're wearing a shirt or a t-shirt, there's been no harm and no damage done to the environment.
So that's the growing. What about the dyes? Can you give us a bit of a rundown on dye history and the kind of dyes you use now?
Yeah, I think that's where most of the change is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. If not has happened in the previous 5 to 10 years. It's going back probably in the 1960s, 1970s. The dyes that were used in cotton manufacturing, the dye that were used in a lot of apparel were heavy iron and heavy metal dyes, azo dyes and vat dyes, which were questionable whether they were actually environmentally sustainable, and in actual fact in some circumstances very damaging. Even down to denim, which was ultimately originally using indigo dyes, which is, whilst indigo is a natural material, the way that the dyeing process was working means that it couldn't break down, and it was actually detrimental to the environment. How technology has moved on now into different chemistries and to different type of dye stuffs. The dye stuffs that we're using today, the more modern dye stuffs, actually break down along with the cotton itself. And I'm sure that will carry on into the future to be looking at vegetable dyes and other natural materials.
So what's your vision for English fine cottons? Where are you taking this?
Well, we hope to be able to say to all the UK manufacturers and the UK consumer is that if they're looking for a community-based, sustainable product in its natural sense, whether that's cotton or whether that's in any other substrate, whether it's in linen, hemp, jute, or whatever other material in the future, is that they're going to have a supply chain, that they're going to be able to know who's touched that. They're going to know that it's come from Fred and Julie and Bob, and they're going to be able to say, right, okay, I know exactly who's made that, where it's come from, and it's an honest, transparent product that's going to last generations.
Does it cost more? Because sometimes that's the determining factor, isn't it? So can you talk to that?
The difficulty is does honesty cost more than cheating? Not sure. The truthful fact is that we're transparent with that as well. We're quite open about how much we pay our employees and our colleagues, and how much our cotton is and what the processes cost. Yes, of course, labour is more expensive in the UK. So if we're making a t-shirt in the UK, we will tell our clients that it takes 6 minutes to sew a t-shirt, and that 6 minutes at the rates of pay in the UK costs X amount, cotton costs Y amount. So we don't think that that's any more expensive, because if the consumer is actually willing to pay a reasonable rate of pay for a very high quality product that we can automate and make effectively within inside the UK, or is their conscience telling them something else, that they actually want to delve into the realms of poverty and continue to pay for lower cost items that have got something shady in the background? Are they 100% sure that this garment can be made at this price? Are they sure? And if they can, why can't it? Is that because the fabric isn't right? the heritage of the material isn't right, or is it because they're not paying a living wage to whichever garment manufacturing operation is working on?
There seem to be a lot of words around this, but also perhaps a lot of greenwashing going on from companies saying they're doing better. Is there still a problem?
It's a massive problem. I've got no doubt that the movement towards honest and transparent and sustainable product is growing in strength, and the large red brick retailers are starting to react. There's some luxury garment manufacturers that are hiding behind certificates. Oh great, as long as you've got this certificate or that certificate. Well, I've just mentioned that those certificates aren't the panacea. They've got faults in themselves. So it's not actually dealing with the problem. There's ways now to monitor raw material. There's ways for these suppliers to actually guarantee that the raw material is grown in an ethical and transparent way. So why aren't the retailer taking up those options? And the truthful fact is because their supply chains are so complex and convoluted, and they're so vast. By doing that, they're going to add a layer of cost, and that means that they'll be less competitive and they'll lose market share, and the share price will go down. So until the population and their consumers start to insist on direct knowledge about the supply chain, that pressure will remain on that supplier.
So because it comes direct to the farm where your cotton comes from, are there any other traceable systems that are functioning?
We use a bioscience business in the background. It's not linked to our company, it's completely independent, a company called Oritane. And Oritane is a bioscience business, is a phenomenal company. They're able to test any material, and particularly in cotton we're talking about, they're able to test any cotton at any part of the process, whether that's in raw cotton, whether it's in yarn, fabric, whether it's in post-production, or whether it's actually been worn 3 or 4 times. And they can test that cotton and they can actually detect which country and which region that cotton originates and what percentage of that is. In certain circumstances, particularly in North America and Australia, they can go way beyond that. They can actually tell you which state and which region of the state. And in some parts, and particularly our American supply, they can tell you which paddock the cotton has been grown from. So that's independent of ourselves. Now that really gives the consumer the complete confidence that when they're buying something, it doesn't contain 5% of this and 3% of that and 2% of this. It's 100% pure from the region that we say it's from.
What about other fibres? Can you talk to that a bit? You've obviously chosen to go with cotton. Is there potential for other natural fibres, or considering the fact that 2/3 of clothing is made from polyester, is there any hope there?
Yeah, we don't care whether it's cotton or whether it's any other material, as long as it's honest and transparent, and we know its lineage. We're actually already working on some new technologies where we're using cotton along with some fibre that's made with seaweed, for example. On the other side of our business, we've got a protective textiles business that uses high performance synthetic materials. So to us, we are a fabric and a yarn manufacturing business. What's important to us is that we do no damage, and we've got a sustainable long-term future. So we're partially funding and participating in a lot of research that's being done at Leeds University at the moment, that actually researches not only the materials but how they're made, how the yarn's made, and how the fabrics are made. So to reduce or actually remove pilling and microfiber manufacture or microfiber generation. The future, particularly if it's synthetic, if we can make garments that don't shed, don't pill, that don't generate microplastics, and if they do, they break down, that's got to be the future goal, and that's where we're working towards.
What about recycled polyester? How's that going?
Well, some research suggests that recycled polyester is good for the environment primarily because at least you're up using it. We're not quite sure. We're not saying one way or the other, but what we are concerned with is every time you break down a fibre, you're generally making it into smaller bits, and the smaller bits cause more problems. Then again, if it's guaranteed that you've actually reconstituted the polyester by a chemical process and it's as strong and as capable as an original polyester, but you're reusing the original chemistry, that might be a route forward.
That would use quite a lot of energy, would it, or not?
It's not something that we get involved with because that's really a raw material for ourselves. Obviously, if we're buying that type of material, we're making sure that at least that company is looking at the whole scheme. They're looking at the carbon footprint in terms of what they're doing with this material, how much is it costing them, what is the carbon footprint in terms of the utility that they're using. Whilst the research with Leeds is actually saying, if we're going to use this material, is it going to cause a bigger problem by using it? Is it as strong? Will it cause another environmental problem in the future? Really, as far as we're concerned, the jury's out, hence the reason why we're focusing on cotton at this point.
So volume is really the key problem with the whole industry, isn't it?
And unless you change education, unless you change desire. So there's some research done in the UK that says that the average household in the 1980s, there was a percentage of their take-home pay that was utilised in apparel and in clothing. That monetary level hasn't changed in 20 years, but the amount of goods that we've bought has increased fourfold. So we're just buying 4 times the amount of rubbish that we were spending the same amount of money. Why? Because we can only wear one pair of trousers at a time. So unless we change that and start actually saying, buy less, but buy higher quality, buy something that lasts, buy something that you have value in, that you want to wear, that in actual fact yourself are proud of, go back to that traditional value, we're going to have the problem of people wanting to buy cheaper and cheaper and cheaper product. The pressure to buy cheaper and cheaper and cheaper product just goes down the value chain. More pressure on the garment manufacturer, more pressure on the fabric manufacturer, more pressure on the spinner, more pressure on the raw material. In its lowest common denominator, that pressure results in compromise. And that's where the problem starts. So if you start to actually buy a higher quality product that's going to last, that you look after, that you value, that will give you life, and then, who knows, actually you can upcycle it or recycle it or use it for different things later on in life, that's when you start to be able to put back money into the whole of the supply chain. Pay the farmer what it's worth to actually grow the product. Pay the spinner enough to be able to pay his employees and work ethically. Pay the garment manufacturing a good wage to be able to automate and actually invest in his environment, in his society, in his community. That's what's important about the future of textiles.
Just to finish then, Andy, can you chat about what you're wearing and your own clothing preferences?
Yes, I certainly can. It's purely cotton at the present moment, and we're a small team, so every time that we develop a new t-shirt or a new sweatshirt, I tend to wear it. So certainly the t-shirt that I'm wearing is probably 2 or 3 years old, and as you can see, it's generally still in the state of it's not pilling, it's lasting, and we expect that our t-shirts will probably last 200 washes to the very least. The jacket's made by a brand in London, and I'm wearing a pair of cotton denim jeans that are made in Germany. But by and large, we wear what we make here, so we're doing fabric testing and garment testing online.
So 200 wears out of your t-shirts. What would the average t-shirt get that would you buy on the high street?
Yes, well, there's some research to suggest that average across the world, the average amount of wears for a t-shirt is 4 wears. Now that does incorporate those t-shirts that might go to a festival or a gig or even a charity t-shirt that's only worn once. But to say it's 4 wears across the world, where our t-shirt should be able to be worn at 200 times. You know, the cost per wear of our t-shirt is significantly lower, but it does change the mindset. It changes the mindset from saying, okay, there's another t-shirt, I'll wear it and I'll throw it away tomorrow, to actually having that pristine white t-shirt or the black t-shirt, you put it in and then you mix and match. You might wear a t-shirt underneath a jacket and go out for a lovely dinner, or it's encouraging to me when I see fantastic people like Tom Cruise doing his junket for Maverick. You won't see him without a white t-shirt on all the time. And if we start getting back into that fashion of saying, you know, something classic pieces and brought together in different environments look different. You can have your individuality, but you've got one classic piece or two classic pieces, two T-shirts in your wardrobe. Fantastic.
So I guess it's getting to back to old-fashioned values, isn't it?
Old-fashioned, yeah, that's it. Yeah, traditional, old-fashioned. We always use these words. Everybody tends to look back on the past was terrible. We've moved on, we've developed, we're moving forward. So the reason why I try not to use the words, I know what it means. Traditional values, old-fashioned values. No, it's honest and responsible. So if we can start to actually use true words rather than the wording sustainable, it's common sense. If you spend it once and you spend it wisely, you don't need to spend it 3 and 4 or 5 times. You can use your money on the other things in life.